Next up, an entrepreneurial genius. I venture to suggest that none here present tonight have made a cultural contribution to this city equal to that of David Lloyd. He is the visionary who gave us David's Emporium. That endlessly fascinating treasure trove combination of the useful and the useless. A template, as he notes, for not only 30-odd cheap retailing shops about town that failed miserably to replicate the magic formula, but for the warehouse itself. A veritable Steve Tyndall in our midst, Mr. Lloyd more recently swapped the plastic masks and cotton spools for high art, embracing an aesthetic at the other end of the spectrum. He has also braved the pirates and sailed up the Amazon in search of payback for that supremely Anglophile yachtsman and red sock wearer, Sir Peter Blake. David Lloyd.
I was fortunate in 2008 to be speaking at the second Pechakucha on my then recently completed studio and gallery that I'd just built, and that's a shot of it. But the next image is going to be of the Opera House in Manaus, which was the start of an adventure that had been 6 to 7 years in the planning. I was the last man, Charlie, to be invited along on this trip, and I was asked 3 weeks before the trip started if I wanted to join the expedition. I certainly did, and with Injection's name, getting name plaques commissioned that you'll see later and $10,000 gained from Gallagher's, off I went. There were 4 medical doctors on board. There was 12 of us all together. The person on the left is an SAS doctor who came late and went early because she was going off to Afghanistan. On the right-hand side is a local doctor, Mark Taylor. Here he is on the back of a motorbike as we are going off to a local hospital on one of the villages to get some snake serum for our further adventures. Mark assures me that he tells all his patients they must never ride on motorbikes when overseas, nor go without crash helmets. Here we are off on an adventure on the River Negro, a tributary of the Amazon. The colour of the water was pretty black, I can assure you. This is going down one of the smaller tributaries as we are going off to view a large waterfall that was only discovered in the early 1990s. Notice the chainsaw in the front of the boat with a staff member, because the trees would fall over the river when undermined by floodwaters and have to be cut for our getting through. This shows a staff member, Bosco, who had jumped into the water to get a mutter, spelt the same as our local town, but it's an ancient turtle. It had a strange way of rejecting people or enemies with a very strong, violent, horrible smell. Here we are on one of our treks having a well-earned breather. It was hot, wet and sticky, but we were very fortunate. There were very few mosquitoes, although there was a nasty little fellow called a black fly which left a black spot. In this shot, I'm holding on the left you can see there's a person there. He was a Barry Crump type character, and he had jumped over the boat 3 times before he came up with this alligator, caiman, as they're called in the area. Some people say I'm looking frightened. Some say well, whatever. I leave it to you to make up your own mind. Here, the leader, Dr. Mark Shaw, is inspecting the caiman, and about 15 seconds after that photo was taken, it piddled all over Mark Shaw, who assures me that he's going for the Guinness Book of Records as being the only doctor in the Waikato who's been piddled on by an alligator. The rivers are very much the main highways of the area, and here there are traders who have got, it wasn't bark, it was from palm trees, but it's been chopped and sliced and is going to be used in straw brooms. This is manioc, which is being prepared in the river. It is a staple diet for the local people. The rivers are very clean, although often brown, and they hold 20% of the world's fresh water. This is a family that we helped to haul their heavy canoe over the rapids. They had a 3-day journey from there to get home. They'd stopped and got some petrol from us, and they were off. You can see in the photo between the two people close together, there is a figure in the background of a very sick girl. If you have a look at the person on the left, you can see a rather nasty, lethal-looking weapon. It was MAF and security inspectors, both national and local government areas, and searching on board for turtles or small fish that are very collectible. This is a ruin of a rubber baron's house built in the 1880s in Velo Aero, where we placed a cross for Peter Blake, and this was the aim of the trip all the way through. And I think it's the next shot you will see these two people who were on Peter Blake's fatal trip. And the cross was erected. Our names are down the bottom on plaques. I have commissioned another one that I'm taking back to place there because people have gone up and they've said, oh, goodness me, there's a lot of people buried here in this grave, isn't there? So David Lloyd apparently is dead with another 11 people over there, according to some of the locals. The chap with the white cap was our guide, and he actually owned the boat that we were on. He'd been Peter Blake's guide, and those 4 people were with Blake 10 years ago, and when a wooden cross was put up, and the idea was to go back 10 years later and place the concrete one. I was in charge of the art and culture of the trip, and here there's a local boy drawing a picture of himself doing a self-portrait so I could bring it back to the Hamilton West School. I'd had 2 classrooms do self-portraits they took over. Miguel, the chap with the white cap, came over to New Zealand in February for a reunion that we had, and here I had a display at the framing workshop selling 7 of those drawings, and the money has all gone over to Miguel's foundation for helping the poor, $2,000 in all. This is rock art, and through unforeseen circumstances we only saw half that was available. I'm going back in September because when we couldn't see the rest, Miguel said, David, come over with an open ticket, and that's what I'm going to do. But you might have noticed that it does look a bit like alien art, so maybe the spacecraft have been there. Thank you.